Welcome to episode one of the My Footballing Journey series. I'm Joe, and this is another Nowhere Man. Today, we are joined by Tom Fry, and Tom's going to tell us a little bit about how he got into the industry, where he currently works, and what he gets up to. And he's also going to give us some tips and answer some of your questions. So, Tom, why don't we start with where you are, what you do for work, and who you work for?
I'm based in Preston, but I work for Port Vale as a technical scout, and essentially the main part of that is player scouting for potential signings. Once that part's done, I work really closely with the director of football, Dave Flitcroft, and the head of recruitment, Tommy Johnson, and we'll go through kind of the process of step by step of making presentations, speaking to the manager and the coaching staff, um, and then the presentation to the player, etc.
Okay. And do you work full time or part time, freelance or employed? How does that work for you?
So I'm part time at the moment. Hopefully in the near future, going to be going full time.
Hmm. Because a lot of people, I think, that are potentially part of our community at the moment, a lot of people that are interested in getting into the game. I think there's a lot of questions surrounding voluntary work and then part-time work, freelance work, and full-time work. What would you say is the natural pathway from your experience so far?
So obviously, I think football gets a lot of stick for it, but if you look at anything in terms of getting into a job, a lot of it is doing like the volunteer side and then progressing your way up. No one just jumps into a job. For example, if you look at like teaching, you've got to do a 3 year degree, then you might have to do a PGSE after that, and a lot of that is volunteering hours during the whole process of it. So because there isn't a degree of scouting, it kind of comes across as like the industry is using people. But the way I see it is they're taking a risk on you. They don't know whether your product is good, whether you're going to be reliable, and um, so they're taking a risk on you, and then you're rewarding that, and you kind of develop a bit of a reputation, and then you there's kind of a switch point where they know your value, you know that you're providing value, and then that's kind of the point where you should be going, yeah, I should be paid now.
Mm.
But that part is quite tricky because obviously everyone wants to keep things for free.
Yeah, 100%. Well, this is a footballing journey series. So let's go back to the start of your personal journey. How did you kind of begin this journey? Did you always want to work in football, and how did you kind of navigate those early stages?
Yeah, so I knew quite early I wasn't going to be a player. That was quite a quick decision. I grew up in a place called Kendal up in Cumbria. There's not many teams around there that even scout. Um, there wasn't like facilities and the coaches and stuff like that. So um, when I before I went to university, I, I played football manager like mad.
Yeah.
Like I put in real hours in there. If it was a paid job, I'd be a millionaire. Um, so yeah, really loved that. And as a result of that, I wanted to be a coach.
Mm,
So I did coaching at university. Um, then after that, went into coaching in kind of primary schools, doing like multi sports, but primarily the aim was to do football. Did a bit of grassroots stuff.
mm,
Um, then got to COVID. I'd been doing some stuff for a company called ADI, which used to stream. So basically, all of the football in the country on like a Tuesday night or a Saturday, it all gets streamed into a building in Preston, recorded, and then that gets distributed out. So I was watching football a lot doing that. Then I moved to Opta, um, doing the statistics. So that was more of an in-ground job. So I'd be watching even more football. So Wigan when they're in the Championship, and then Bolton when they're in League One, and then when Bolton. They both got relegated in my first season working there. Maybe a bit cursed. So I got to see Bolton in League Two, Wigan in League One. So like I started building up a bit of a knowledge bank of the leagues, the Championship, the difference
Mhm.
between the leagues, and difference between Championship, League One, and down to League Two. Yeah, then COVID hit. Uh, Obviously, found myself with quite a lot of time, and I set up. In fact, just before COVID hit, I'd set up this analysis business. So I was going and filming like grassroots games, and then doing analysis for them to then improve their game. And so I kind of moved on from coaching a little bit and wanted to go into the performance analysis side of the game.
Mhm.
And through that, I was using LinkedIn. And one day I was just kind of surfing through LinkedIn and saw an old school friend who was working at Port Vale.
Mhm.
Um, and just kind of messaged him, kind of reignited that like friendship. And he offered me the opportunity during COVID to do some like remote work with him, as kind of like an internship.
Yeah.
Halfway through that season, so this must be October 2020, I think. The chief scout left, and suddenly there's this gap in the recruitment side of the club. So
Mhm.
started doing a bit of recruitment. Realised that when I was playing Football Manager all of them years before, I could fly for a season, like the actual playing side of the game, in like a day. But when it got to the transfer windows, that might take 2 days because I'd spend so much time looking into the detail, trying to find players, looking at like really random, obscure places where I could get players. Um, looking at the attributes, filtering through, like that was kind of more like the data side of the game,
Yeah.
um, yeah, fly through the season. So I realized like that was really what I really enjoyed. So I was then kind of flipped from doing the performance analysis to more like a recruitment analyst and doing
Mm.
video work,
Mm.
in kind of scouting. So then from there, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do, really commit to it. At the end of that, kind of COVID was kind of relieving a bit. So went to Kings Lynn on a volunteer basis. I literally messaged, must have been every club from League One down to maybe Step Two. And Kings Lynn got back to me. Really interesting project. They just sold a player to Blackpool, and the idea was that they wanted to keep replicating that business model of kind of bringing in young players, developing them, selling them on to big clubs.
Mm.
So that was kind of my role. It was kind of secondary to the actual to like the manager side of it. So it was like I was getting scouts in to cover games and across the country, kind of built a scouting team.
Yeah.
And at that level, you don't have the the money to be able to pay people. You don't have like the luxury of being able to like cherry pick people. So we were doing a lot of coaching with the like kind of coaching scouts to become better, um, which worked really well. A lot of them have gone on to do some really good things. So we were doing that, developing scouts, finding really good young players. And then at the end of that season, the manager wanted to go in a slightly different way. So
Mm.
um, and we'd actually been relegated, so the curse hits again. Um, so and yeah, National North level. I've still lived in Preston. Kings Lynn is like 4.5 hours away. So at that level, I can't watch players locally to Kings Lynn. So it just makes the job really difficult. So um, left there, went to uh, just doing some bits on my own, doing a bit of freelance stuff. And I set up a business, which was to help scouts get better.
Mm.
Um, which with the people that really engaged with it, it worked really well. I found like a lot of people kind of like they wanted to be scouts, but they didn't need to be scouts, if that makes sense. It's that a different desire level. And the people that felt like they needed to be scouts, they needed to work in football, they really
Mm.
flew through it, took on advice really well. And there's quite a few of them that have gone on to really good things. Um, so yeah, that would be around kind of November 2021. Um, I've been doing a little bit with Doncaster on a
Mm.
just on a freelance basis, and getting like tickets to games because I was going anyway, so it made sense to get the tickets through them and do some work for them. And then joined Port Vale in January 2022.
Yeah.
From there, it just kind of really kicked on and learned a lot. Really committed into the role, and kind of had to move away from doing the tutoring stuff just because I really wanted to put my time into it and make sure I was doing the best I could.
Mm. No, that's good. I think that's really insightful for those people that are looking for a way into the industry. Um, I guess my next question for you, really, with that background that you've just explained, is, what's the key piece of advice that you would give to people that are looking to move into recruitment scouting?
Oof. I mean, I'd probably split it into three different parts. There's part of it is sacrifice,
Mm.
and that counts for anything. If you want to do anything and advance through anything, you've got to make a bit of a sacrifice, whether that's money, whether that's time, effort. You know, football is played as an entertainment, so that's going to be like in social hours. So you might have to sacrifice, birthdays or
Mm.
missed events, money as well. This is probably quite an extreme example, but for me, like I was so fed up in my other job. I really wanted to put everything into scouting, so I left my other job. I was on um like full-time wages, and it just went full on into the scouting.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, that's an extreme case, I think, and some people might not be able to do that. But for me, that's if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be where I am right now.
Mm.
So, that's sacrifice, knowledge. You've to be a scout, I mean, you've got to have. I always say you've got to have the knowledge before you go into the club. You can't go into the club and then try and pick up the knowledge. You're just too far behind. So I'd say that again with anything, like you couldn't go into a school and start being a teacher
Yeah.
just straight off the bat. You've got to like do your research, do your kind of learning beforehand, so you're ready to do the job. Not
Mm.
many people want to teach you to be a teacher or to be a scout whilst you're actually doing it. It just makes their job harder.
And it's a
So
competitive
yeah,
industry in that sense as well, isn't it? In that, once you're in there, everyone alongside you, as much as you will get on, you're all kind of competing for a very small number of roles as well, aren't you?
yeah, exactly. So it's very similar to being a player in football. You've got to be better than 99.9% of everyone else that wants to do it.
Did you
So
notice with the people that you were working with, when you were helping people potentially get better at their scouting and trying to break into the game, did you notice that some people maybe just underestimated the amount of effort that had to go into that to compete with other people? Do you think people underestimate how much competition there is in this side of the game?
100%. Yeah, there is so many people that want to do it, and people because they watch football and they think they understand football, and they see it as like something that they could just step into. But there's so much depth that goes into it.
Mm.
Um, you might watch your favorite team in League One or whoever you support, and go, yeah, I know them really well. But in scouting, you've got to know every team really well. You've got to know the ins and outs of like contracts, how like transfers might work, wages, and
Hmm.
agents in the game, where you might get references from different
Yeah.
markets.
And
Now there's
these things that you're listing now are things that you can only really pick up once you are in a role. These are the things that you can only really learn about when you're given the chance to learn about them. But I think it's about, for most people, understanding what you have to do to get to that chance, because people aren't just going to hand that chance to you, and you do have to kind of grab that for yourself.
yeah, and I think a lot of that kind of comes through the volunteering side. Um, it's it is difficult to get them skills, like you said. If you're not in it,
Mm,
you've got no reason to try and acquire what sort of wages someone's on. So yeah, so sacrifice, knowledge, and the third one I would say is I call it being visual, like being viewed.
mm,
So like being out there. So that could be I would put networking into there as
yeah.
well. So like if you go into games, networking there, um, or there's plenty of people that have done it via Twitter.
Hmm.
So putting their work out on Twitter. Now,
That was
there's
me.
some
I was
people,
Twitter. That was my pathway.
yeah, yeah, really good. I mean, it's a great way to get your work out there and get it seen.
Yeah.
What I've found is some people will kind of hide behind like an account sort of thing. So like
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
instead of putting their name on there and owning their own work, they're
Mm.
kind of making like a some like a might be like a club and analysis account sort of thing, and then being like a bit of a ghost behind that and
Yeah.
not owning your work. I mean,
That makes
that
sense.
is it's great for getting your work out there, but no one knows who it is that's doing it. So
Yeah.
yeah, being visual, and then yeah, you could use LinkedIn to show your work as well,
Hmm.
and connecting on there and people seeing you.
100%. Well, we're going to talk about Port Vale specifically and some of the stuff that you've done there and some of the things that you're proud of within your career so far and where you might want to go personally. But that's going to be us for the YouTube version of this podcast. For the full unedited version of this conversation, head over to the Patreon channel. You can sign up for just £5 a month and you'll have access to free HD games for report writing, exclusive podcasts and interviews like this one, insight from industry experts, and of course, one-to-one access to guidance with me personally. Thank you very much for watching so far. I'm Joe, and this is another Nowhere Man.